In my previous video about non-triality, I tried to cram all this information and ideas into one video, and it seemed a little convoluted, so I want to make this video here about non-triality in a clear and concise way, or at least attempt to, and let you know how that relates to the idea of non-duality as a whole. Well, here we go. I'm Russ Rapp, and this video is going to be about non-triality as it relates to non-duality, and essentially it's one and the same thing. But before we get into non-triality, I just want to start with one main point that I try to get across in most of my videos on non-duality, is that when you watch videos of mine or from any other speaker of non-duality, you're not going to really get anything out of it. And what I mean by that is you may learn about the concept of non-duality in its basic or simple form, but as an individual, you're not going to really learn anything that you can use, or it's not going to add benefit to your life in a sense, because non-duality in its most simple way of understanding it, it means not to. And all that essentially means is that there is no duality. And so the confusing part is that people take that idea of non-duality and say that there is a duality and a non-duality. But essentially non-duality encompasses a not duality and a duality. So there's not duality and duality, and it's all one and the same thing essentially. And so it's kind of like the idea of walking a tightrope. So on the one hand, you define the concept or the idea of non-duality in a simple way just to be able to create enough meaning to communicate with other people by saying it means not to, or there is no separation, or whatever basic way you want to describe it. But it's not a prescriptive kind of a concept where it's going to tell you how to live your life. So if you're looking for something where you want to know, how do I become a better person, or how do I grow, or how do I have a clear mind, or what's the best way to raise my vibration, non-duality is going to leave you frustrated, because that's not what it's about. So you define non-duality in a really simplistic way, because on the one hand, anywhere outside of that definition of non-duality, because non-duality essentially is saying that we give life meaning all of that it has. So there is no meaning essentially. But since life has meaning, since we're looking at it from a non-dual perspective, if you go too far off that, then you know by the definition that life has no meaning. But then if you go on the other hand, on the other way, to say, well, you can have non-dual awareness where you're somehow connected with everything, and you have this sense that you are not separate from what you see around you, then it gets lost and it loses its main simple definition in and of itself, because all of a sudden you're defining non-duality in all these different ways, and the core, the essence of non-duality gets lost. And so that's what I when I start my videos, I say I'm Russ Rapp, bringing you new ideas, because the mind works in complex ways, and it wants to add all of these different elements to what non-duality is, and that just makes it confusing, and it really lessens and almost undefines non-duality, because you're not saying what it actually is. Because non-duality essentially is seeing that you put a wall between yourself and reality, you create a separation, and non-duality points to that wall and says, hey, look, you built a wall. It's not saying, well, you got to tear down that wall, or hey, let's make a fence instead. It's just saying that, hey, there's a wall there. That's all it's doing. And so there's going to be separation and not separation, and non-duality encompasses all of that. So when we talk non-triality, I settled on non-triality because I like the idea of saying non-tri in the word versus non-triality, so non-triality, so talking about three. And this is where I kind of lost it in the previous video I made, where there's a lot of different pieces, a lot of studying that I've done on various different concepts, and so I try to cram it all into one thing. And how my mind works, it's hard to take all these ideas and funnel it into a way that you can comprehend or grasp what I'm trying to say, because it can be confusing. And that's why I like non-duality, because it's simple. But let's convolute it a little bit more here and just talk about non-triality in a sense that, I take a lot of this conceptual framework from the Enneagram, which you should watch some videos on that. And one day I want to do an Enneagram in relation to non-duality, or maybe a nine-part series, because that was something I was into quite in depth for quite a few years, in college, out of college, just on my own, because it was something interesting to me. So there's 9 types for that, but basically there's a triangle shape in that forms the triad. And so when you relate the triad to non-duality, or non-triality, excuse me, you can say there's 3 aspects to it. There's the thinking aspect, there's the doing aspect, and the feeling aspect. You can talk about types or aspects or however you want to describe it, but essentially there's people that focus on the mental state, the thinking aspect. There's the heart-centered, the feeling, emotions, and then instinctual, the gut center, doing types. And so a lot of times people come to non-duality from the thinking type, the thinking aspect, because essentially it's a search for meaning, it's a search for purpose. When your life isn't going the way that you want, or you want something more out of life, or you want to understand what are we here for, the why, that is that search of understanding through the mind. And so when we're talking non-duality and concepts, that's typically a lot of the questions and the focus that you get is on the thinking area, the mind center of the discussion. And so a lot of times when people come to non-duality from that mindset, the thinking, they have questions regarding, okay, so now I understand the concept. It means not two, there is no separation, blah, blah, blah. I get all that, I understand it, but what's the point? What am I supposed to do with it? So then it goes kind of over to the other center of the thinking, or the doing center. It's like, well, okay, great. Well, you're just sitting here talking, babbling about nothing, essentially, talking about non-duality. What am I supposed to do with it? Well, nothing. There's no requirement to do anything. But that is the next focus. After you focus on you understand the concept, and you have this understanding, or you have these epiphany moments, or you get this sense of the connection of life. And then you start to ask, well, what am I supposed to do with my life? Do I sit on a hill and meditate? Do I go work my 9-to-5 job? What am I supposed to do? And the flip side to that as well, from a thinking standpoint, is talking about love and feeling. And so when you go and search for non-duality from your mind, and you understand the concept, you may ask, what am I supposed to do with it? But you also may ask, well, why do I feel this way? Why do I feel disconnected from life? If life is interconnected, there is no separation, there is no duality, why do I feel separate? Why do I not feel that love, that connection with other things? And so you kind of get in this tailspin. So that's kind of the thinking type. That's probably the majority of people that comes to non-duality, because if you're not familiar with non-duality or have any interest, you have no search for meaning or purpose or bigger picture, or you're not really an intuitive type of a person, maybe you're more of a sensing type person that likes to build things and not really worried about what happens after you die and all that stuff, then you probably, if you come across non-duality, it'll be like, well, what's the point of that? Who cares? But if you've watched and so I'm mostly speaking to the people that have maybe watched some other speakers talk about non-duality, and you know enough about it where you're confused, and the confused mind says no. So when you talk about non-duality, That's typically those questions that you get. So the doing types, the doers, the doing aspect, the instinctual part, typically they may not be as attracted initially to non-duality because the focus is on the pragmatic, the real world, the nuts and bolts. How do I, how I gain personal power? How do I do my job? How do I move up in the world? How do I maneuver this life, essentially? And so they may not be interested initially at non-duality until maybe they're the king of the castle, the king of the hill. They have all their life in order. They have a lot of money, a house, and everything is great from the financial end of it. But all of a sudden, they're missing the meaning of life or the purpose, and they start questioning, well, I have all this stuff, why am I not happy? Or why, since I have all this stuff, I have money or fame or influence, that type of thing. Why aren't people responding the way I want? Why do I feel disconnected from others? And so they would maybe come to non-duality from that standpoint. It's searching for that meaning, that purpose. And in response to the message of non-duality, they'll probably want to take that and do something with it. And so they may not, once they learn the idea, they may want to teach a class on meditation or try to come up with some non-dual awareness techniques or something like that. And so they want to make something out of it, something tangible, something real, which all of that's fine, but as long as you don't lose the the main message, the only point that non-duality actually makes, that's the doing type. So then the feeling type, focused on love in connection with others, and so a lot of those people maybe will come to non-duality from it's kind of a more of a, how do you say this, focusing on relationship with others. And so typically I would assume that the reaction of learning about non-duality is to wonder, how do I help others? So I learn about non-duality, I learn about I learn about that there is no separation. And yet, in their relationships, maybe they don't understand why other people don't feel the same way they do. And so, what can I do as a feeler, as someone that's focused on that love aspect? What am I supposed to do with it to help others or to interact with others in a certain way? Because if life is this interconnected love, why does my relationship fail? Why does my marriage fail? Why don't my kids like me, or whatever the issue is? So there's this focus on, maybe you have a lot of those people turn into speakers that want to help people kind of get into their emotions, get into the feeling of it, and really understand it from that standpoint. And then really from a feeler standpoint, it's the other part of it is, once you know that connection, you've really sensed that connection with reality, then it's, how do I establish my own sense of identity from the doing standpoint? How do I understand my own purpose, my own drive in life, and really connect with that instinctual side as well? And so those are the three aspects in a nutshell, where you have the thinkers, the doing, and the feeling. And so when it comes to that, the basis of all the non-triality is the same thing in a different conceptual form. And so the basis of thinking is this idea or concept of free thought, of ultimate knowledge, or openness. So I'll come back to thinking because I'm thinking about it. But from a doer standpoint, it's this idea of power. And from a non-dualist perspective, once you identify as a separate self, you become this tiny little thing that's powerless in a universe that's out to kill you. Eventually, at some point. But it's really connecting to that power, that drive in the universe, and it really comes down to the idea of God-given, unalienable rights. The basis of reality is that you have value, that you have a reason to be here, and that you have the ability to negotiate life and to maneuver however you please. And then on the feeling type, it's this idea of unconditional love. So the basis of reality is unconditional love. Infinite love is the only truth. Everything else is illusion. So the basis of unconditional love means that you are loved, you are forgiven in this moment, always and forever. And it sounds a little, like a love song, but that's essentially what the feeling type, the basis of that, the essence of that is talking about. And so the thinking type, going back to that, that's understanding, that's meaning, that's purpose, that's knowing that your life has purpose because you are here and you are a part of it. You are what is. So you find that deeper understanding. And so when you think about it in those terms, the kind of the ideal aspect or essence of the three pieces of the non-triality triad, when you think about that, you may say, well, how do I experience unconditional love when I sense that there is conditions, or I'm locked in a jail cell? How am I supposed to be this non-dual thing when I don't have the freedom that I'm looking for, or my mind works constantly, it's always repeating itself, or I can't cut through the clutter, or I think I'm crazy, or whatever that is. Why is that? And so non-duality takes the whole idea of non-triality, and the basis of it is that there is no it's kind of saying that there's both, essentially. So there is absolute and there's conditional. And so how does that help you? Well, it doesn't, essentially. And so the reason why I'm hoping, if you made it this far, you're watching this video, to circle back to the beginning, is when you come to non-duality, you're coming to it because you probably hit a brick wall, you hit a standstill where you're trying to find this meaning and purpose in life, and maybe you've joined a group, or tried to meditate, or eat healthy, or whatever the things you're trying to do to raise your vibration and reach this ultimate pinnacle of reality, or create this non-dual awareness that is always persistent. And so you're always failing because you're always meant to fail, because the separate self will never know the true meaning of non-duality, because all we can point to is to say, hey, there's a wall here. You're hitting the wall. You're hitting the wall again. You're hitting the wall again. And again, I can do this forever, but I'm not going to. But that's essentially what your mind does, is you're constantly going to hit a wall until you realize that that wall is both real and unreal. So it's there, but it's not there. And the whole aspect of life that we go through on a daily basis is that most of the messages that we get and that we receive are saying that we are separate. And so we only get that one side of the duality, that or the illusory duality, that says that this world, this moment, this screen, my hands, the dresser, the candles, all of that is real. But no one ever says, hey, maybe it's unreal at the same time. Maybe you're living in a matrix. And so by pointing that out with non-duality, it loosens up that connection, that it takes off that burden in a sense, if you really listen to the message. And as Paul Hederman likes to say, you travel lighter. So that ground of being is empty, and so you're able to still deal with everything, all the crap in life, but then you have this kind of lighter mode to deal with it. And so then if you're watching this video, then it's like, well, how do I get to that lighter stage? How do I relax? How do I, find peace and stuff? And that's where the confusion lies. But with non-duality, it's just saying that no matter what happens, no matter what situation you're in, you're forgiven in this moment, right now, always, and forever. And so you can just relax and enjoy the fact that you are what is. So I've reached the 20-minute mark. I hope that was, it's probably not more concise because it's a longer video, but I hope that was helpful for you. And like I said before in the other video, non-triality, non-quadrality, it's all the same thing. But when you break it down, it's both and nothing. It's non-dual. It's not dual and not dual. It's non-dual. So please leave some comments, questions. I enjoy that because when I make these videos, sometimes I'm just like, do I really want to make a non-duality video right now? And when I get some feedback or some people that stir the pot, I really enjoy that because it gives me the motivation to want to talk about something that doesn't need to be talked about. So until next time, peace.